First of all, Governor, thank you for your time. I know you are very, very busy, especially these days. And we want to begin by talking about really 6 months since the Arnold Classic, which very much seems like the start of the pandemic, especially for us here in Ohio, really the first major event in this country to be affected. When you look back, what stands out to you about that moment in time, heading into what we now know would be a pandemic?
Well, first of all, it's hard to believe it's been 6 months. I can't really believe that. But that really was the first major decision that we had to make. We got good advice from Dr. Roberts, got consulted with Mayor Ginther, and Dr. Amy Acton, Health Department, and we made a decision that it made no sense to have thousands and thousands of people come in here, maybe up to 60,000 people from 80 different countries. But it was a tough decision because it was the first real decision that had been made in this country, I think, to not have an event. I mean, we ended up having the event, but we did not allow any spectators. It was the right decision, but at the time, it was a tough call to make.
When did you realize this virus would change everything?
Well, I think most of us, I'm not a medical expert. I've tried to rely on medical experts and health experts throughout this. And, they gave us good advice early on. One piece of advice, I think is worth repeating, and that is, when you make these initial decisions, they're going to seem like they're all premature, they're too early. When you look back on them, they're going to look like they were made too late. And so, throughout this, we had a sense of urgency and to try to get on top of this. And Ohioans were great. We've not seen the flare-ups that we've seen in other states. We've seen great tragedy. We've seen a lot of people die. But we've been able to, I wouldn't say keep it under control, but we've been able to kind of keep the fire down. And that's because, initially Ohioans did everything they could to flatten that curve. Now what Ohioans are doing is wearing the mask, keeping a distance, watching out for the parties with friends and the parties with family that we all love to do, but that we know, can add to the spread.
School back in session, and families are dealing with really impossible decisions about health and safety when it comes to school. What kind of discussions are happening in your house with the grandkids as far as schooling and what's right for your family?
Well, we have some grandkids that are back in school full-time. We have other grandchildren who are remote full-time, and then we have some that are doing both. So we've got a little bit of everything. And look, these are tough decisions. There's no easy answer. We all know the advantage of being back in school, but we also know that this kids can get it and they can spread it, and that's what you really worry about. So these are all tough decisions for the DeWine family and for every other family.
The restaurant industry hit especially hard. If restaurants are open, they're dealing with operating restrictions. Patio seating is about to come to an end because we're getting closer to cooler temperatures. What is next to help these businesses stay in business?
I think the most important thing for our restaurants and other businesses, but maybe particularly for restaurants, is just for people to be confident that they can go out. So my job, I think, is to keep this virus down and work with Ohioans to do everything we can to keep it down. Yes, restaurants are under restrictions. Bars are certainly under restrictions. We're requiring them not to serve alcohol after 10 o'clock. So there's no doubt that we have imposed restrictions. But the other thing that is hitting them is, when people are not confident enough to go out, and that's not going to come, I suspect, until we get this virus, at a much lower level, and ultimately until we knock it in the head with the vaccines.
Have you been out to dinner? Maybe, I know you've been out for carryout, but have you been out to a restaurant for dinner?
No, we've been out with carryout. We've gotten pizza here in Cedarville. We've gotten Colonial Pizza, favorite place of ours, and then we've been to Young's Jersey Dairy and got carry-out ice cream, and We've actually stayed at Young's and separated. You can be outside and you can get, your family separated from other families. So we have done that.
You mentioned the vaccine. There are critics who say, when did this go from flattening the curve to finding a cure? What is the goal now?
Well, the goal is for us to stay alive. I mean, bluntly. The goal is for us to reduce the number of deaths that are occurring. We want to reduce the number of people who are getting sick, because there are some people who've gotten very, very sick. They've not died. They don't show up on our chart under death, but they've gotten very, very sick, and they're still trying to recover. We've had some on our Tuesday and Thursday press conferences. The other goal is to keep the fire down enough so that the economy can come back. I mean, we've had a couple pretty good months. We understand not every business is back totally. We also understand there are people who are still unemployed, can't get a job. So there are people who are hurting out there. But the way we move back towards normal is by keeping the virus down. So those are the goals. Those are the goals. And those have been the goals throughout this.
Why are masks such a contentious issue still?
I don't know. I mean, I guess I do know. Look, no one likes to wear a mask. Particularly during the summer, they can get particularly hot. It's an inconvenience. It's something that we're not used to doing culturally. But the evidence is just overwhelming. And we've seen it in Ohio. When we put the mask order on and required people in our urban areas to wear masks, because those were the counties that were the hottest, the reddest, we started seeing within a week or 10 days a drop in number of cases. And, let's say they were at 60%, Franklin County probably was around 60%. It went then up to 85 or 90%. And that difference caused the virus spread to go down. And it got so that if you look at our counties now, we've only got one county, that's Montgomery County, in the top 10 counties. All the other ones are rural counties. Now that's the bad news. The bad news is it's spread out into our rural areas, and while people are fighting back there, we still don't have the compliance that we would like to have. We would like to get the 50% compliance that we're seeing in some of these counties, up to 80 or 90%. And if we do that, then we can start knocking the virus in the head in those counties as well. So masks are just very, very important. I understand that, some people look at this as an infringement on their freedom. I look at it just the opposite. I look at wearing a mask as a guarantee of our freedom. Helps us get through this, helps us stay alive, helps us from spreading it, gives us the freedom to open our schools, gives us the freedom to have high school football and cross country and all the other things that we want our kids to be able to participate in. We couldn't do that if we were not wearing these masks.
There are a handful of lawmakers from your own party who disagree so strongly with the way you've handled things within the pandemic that they want to impeach you. And for some leaders, that would probably weigh pretty heavily on their minds and their decisions. But you said, and I quote, "have at it." It doesn't seem to really faze you. In fact, none of this, when we talk about even lawsuits, seems to really impact you. Does that come from so many years of public service? Does that come from pandemic data in front of you every day? Does that come from having so many kids that you've seen it all? Where does that come from for you?
Well, it may come from all of those things. Maybe it is having a bunch of kids and being involved in kind of bare knuckle politics for a long time. But seriously, let me tell you what does weigh heavy on me. And it's not somebody filing articles of impeachment. That's not what I think about. But what I think about is the lives out there. I think of the opportunities that are out there and the missed opportunities if we don't get these things right. So those lives weigh very heavily on me. It weighs heavily on me, the people we have in our nursing homes and our obligation to protect them. It weighs heavily on me the fact that, for a long time we had to cut off visitation in nursing homes. And, that's just been very difficult. for the people in the nursing homes and for their loved ones. We now have something where, we're allowing some limited visitation. We hope that that's something that works. But those are the things that weigh on my mind, that keep me awake at night, and that when I wake up in the morning, I start thinking about.
What about when you received your own coronavirus diagnosis, and then we found out, of course, it was a false positive? Did that rattle you in that moment?
Well, it shocked me. Fran and I've been very careful. Doesn't mean that we're immune, we're not, but we've been careful with, who we've come in contact with. So when I went to see the president and they had us do a test, which they always do, and the test came back positive, I was very surprised about that, yeah. But, it turned out I'm not positive, and so we continue on.
There's a lot of discussion about the Big Ten playing football this fall. There are a lot of angry parents, a lot of angry players who feel they've been left out of the discussion. How much of a say do you feel these parents and players should have in this process?
Well, I think the players need to be heard. I think the parents need to be heard. I think Ohio State's listening to them. I mean, Ohio State did not vote to postpone the season. Ohio State voted no. I think that's significant. I've told Dr. Johnson, she and I have talked about this, that I truly believe the way Ohio State is doing it, that while there's always danger, as long as this COVID is around, in contact sports there's some danger, but the way they're doing it, I think that the athletes at Ohio State probably are the safest students there are there. I mean, they're testing every couple of days. There's the added peer pressure of all the players wanting to play, and they know if one of their players gets sick, that hurts their ability to play. So I think all of those things are, very, very important, and I think that, those would be the safest and were the safest and still are the safest students probably at Ohio State.
Our communities are hurting right now for so many reasons. Our minority communities really seem to have an extra layer of pain added on right now, given some really egregious examples of police brutality representing much larger issues right now in our country and our society. How do you stay in touch with that pain to make sure their voices are heard?
Well, there's people, this is an example of people who are in pain. We have a cabinet, there's a very diverse cabinet, and a number of African Americans in our cabinet. I've talked personally with them, and this bothers them a lot. So it should bother the rest of us. Now, it doesn't mean that, police don't generally do a good job. I think we have some amazing police officers who have to make split-second decisions and life or death decisions every single day. And when they get it right, it does not make the news. But we need reform. And we have a bill in the legislature right now. That's been a bill that's been worked out with the Fraternal Order of Police. It's been worked out with different groups, different community groups, and it will do things that will matter. Our bill, when it's passed by the General Assembly, and I hope they will pass it, and I hope they will pass it soon, would start treating police officers like other professionals, like doctors, like nurses, so there would be a board that would regulate them. And if an officer, just like if a nurse makes a huge mistake, well, that goes in that nurse's record. And there's discipline applied. And sometimes licenses are taken away. Well, that should be the same way in regard to police officers. And I think we have bipartisan support for that. I think we also have good support for another provision of bill which says that when there's a police shooting, officer-involved shooting, that case should be investigated not by that police department where that officer belongs, but by another agency, an independent agency. So these are things that we can do. We have a good bill. We need to pass it.
When you look at everything that's happened in 2020 specifically, do you ever wish this happened on someone else's watch?
Well, look, I mean, when you run for governor, you run for governor, and whatever comes, comes. You know that there's going to be some crisis. But certainly, I don't think anybody who's a governor today knew that there would be a crisis that already has lasted 6 months. And it's going to last some more time as well. But, when you run for office, you take what you take. And, we've got a good team. We've got people who are working exceedingly hard. Sometimes they don't get credit, but some of them are working 14, 16 hours a day. And we're doing the best that we can, and we're listening to the medical advice, we're listening to the health experts, and I'm optimistic. We're going to get through this. Ohioans are going to get through this, and the goal should be to get everybody through it so that we can enjoy life when we're through this tunnel.
Final question, Governor. You are a man of faith. How has your faith helped you through this time?
Well, I don't talk a lot about faith, but, I am a person of faith. Fran is as well. What I ask God for is wisdom. That's, so if anyone out there is watching this, and I get letters from people all the time telling me that they're praying for me, which I appreciate very, very much. So, pray for wisdom for me. And I know I've had some of the people who don't agree with what I'm saying and also told me that they're praying for wisdom for me. Just, I guess, better wisdom, they would say. So, in all seriousness, wisdom is what I ask for, and we're not going to get everything right, but I have faith that we're going to get through this, and there's a better day out there ahead.
Governor, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.